Welcome back to Simple Truth, where we try to find some simple truths out of the story of David. That's where we've been for a very, 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 very long time. Probably will continue to be there for a very, very long time. We're in chapter 23. We just looked at verses 16 and 17. Jonathan comes to visit David, right? And reaffirms what has already been said to David, right? These are important moments. These are super important moments where God seemingly comes in and says, hey, just want to remind you that this is going to happen, right? So I want to read 16 and 17 again, and then I want to focus on 18 for a minute and hopefully move forward. It says, then Jonathan, son of Saul, went to David at Horesh. He encouraged him through God. Isn't that amazing, right? God is using Jonathan to encourage him. That's one of the signs of best friendship, right? Is that God will use people in just ways to encourage us, right? And he said to him, don't be afraid. That sounds very much like God, right? Don't be afraid, for the hand of my father Saul cannot find you. You will rule over Israel, and I will be your second in command. Even my father Saul realizes this. We talked about last week just this truth that comes out. God reveals truth in all kinds of different ways, in different moments, right? Saul fully understands what's going on here. The problem is, it's driving him crazy, right? When God reveals something to us and we know what's going on, and everybody else might be sitting around going, what's this all about? But we know. We know what's going on with this whole thing, right? Because God has revealed to us. Saul knows, and so what's happening here is, once again, we've said this over and over, he's not fighting. Saul's not fighting against David. He's fighting against God. Man, it is so crucial for you and I to recognize those moments where we're not fighting against man, we're actually fighting against God. God has declared something, and we absolutely, positively will not embrace it. Job asked that question. Am I to embrace, take good from God, but not the bad that he allows to happen to us? It is important. Right? Embrace the moment that God has. It does not have anything to do with liking it. It has to do with recognizing, being submissive, and being obedient. This is the moment that God has asked me to walk through. I don't have to like it. I don't have to feel good about it. But I do need to be submissive and obedient in it. And Saul refuses to do such. And therefore, it is driving him crazy. Right? The concept is driving him crazy. We've seen this over and over in the people around us. Ever been around somebody that just suddenly goes from leading well, right, or leading, to all of a sudden a totally different person? A lot of times, this is what's happened. Right? A lot of times, God may have, whatever the source he uses, revealed something to a person, and they're fighting against God. In verse 18, it says this, when the two of them had made a covenant before the Lord, David stayed there, but Jonathan went to his house. So they reaffirm the covenant. This is a very interesting thing to me, because I live in a world, my own little world, where I love God to reaffirm things. There's a lot of other people on the opposite side of it who just say, well, God told me one time, and so that's good. Right? Well, again, that is good. It is good for us to not be doubting whether or not God promised or anything. But over and over in the Old Testament, God reaffirms his covenant with people. Why? Because you know what? There exists a generation that didn't know this, right, is what the Bible tells us. So God keeps reaffirming in moments, right? Now again, if we get obsessed with that reaffirmation, well, then that becomes doubt and fear. There's a line there that we got to be really careful about. You can ask God to reaffirm without doubting, right? But you can be doubting and asking God to reaffirm, and that's bringing out fear, right? Reaffirmation is brought by God. Notice at verse 16, Jonathan came with God. God was sending Jonathan to David. He was exactly what David needed in this moment, right? He spoke truth, reminded David, you're going to be king. Everybody knows that, including my dad. And then reaffirming their covenant. We let God do these moments, because when God does these moments, well, then we're in a really good place. When we demand these moments, then we're probably doing them out of fear. Right? So take this whole concept, pull out, right, the simple truth here. Are you in need of being reminded, or has God already done that? Right? Do you need to be able to be used by God for him to send you to somebody else to reaffirm, or to remind, hey, remember, God just wants you to be remembering that he said this is going to happen. And we're all in need of those moments. Sometimes we're on the receiving end. Sometimes we're on the, God will use us to help other people. Remember this. Remember. God says over and over in the Old Testament, please remember. Remember. Remember these moments. Why? Because the enemy's whole plan, right, revolves around time. Using time to draw out things so you think and you forget, right? Or you start to doubt, or you, whatever it is, the enemy loves that, right? God doesn't use time in the same way that the enemy does, right? God uses time. He gives people time to repent, right? He gives time to get it, right? But the enemy uses time for fear. So if a period of time is causing fear in your life, that's not from God. That's from the enemy. Right? But if a period of time is causing you to grow, right, strengthen your faith in God, your hope in God, right, then that's from God. So chew on that. We'll see you next time right here on Simple Truth.